All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started, sir, if you're good.
I am.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So, Satrin, I hope I'm saying that name right. *6 for callers to mute and unmute. That's a great point. Thank you very much, Satrin. Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Brock Young. I am the Deputy Director of the San Francisco Federal Executive Board. I am a current and will always be a veteran. I retired from the United States Army in 2021, conducted a SkillBridge internship with this awesome agency with Sarah Russell, who I will introduce shortly, as my supervisor. In addition to being a veteran, again, I am currently the Deputy Director for the San Francisco Federal Executive Board. We are one of 28 FEBs, all of which are located outside of DC in areas that have large concentrations of federal agencies and federal employees. I work to link senior agency officials and build cooperative relationships across the 9-county Bay Area and Northern California, which is my area of responsibility. One of the things we assist agencies to do is find methods and ways to fill resource shortfalls, talent being one of them. I use my position to help agencies fill priority vacancies and help veterans and transitioning service members and military spouses become more competitive when applying to those positions. In addition to webinars like this, we facilitate the Veterans Federal Employment Collaborative, or hashtag VFEC, a national collaborative that focuses on connecting federal agencies and vacancies with qualified veterans and transitioning service members and military spouses. The LinkedIn group can be found by just searching hashtag VFEC. There will also be a link included at the end of this webinar. Before we get to the resume, I'd first like to introduce the Executive Director of the San Francisco Federal Executive Board, Sarah Russell. Sarah?
Really glad that you were able to make the time today and to join us. You are in fantastic hands with Brock Young, who is really developed quite the following and also is just so excellent at helping people understand the federal resume process, which is unlike anything if you in the private sector for sure, and also probably unlike anything in any other governmental structure. But the feds do it our own special way. I just want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service, and we're all much better people because of you. And to not encourage you would be a crime. To not encourage you to go from military to civilian, federal civilian work is a real missed opportunity. So we are here in part to make sure that you all are informed about this option, and we give you our support because we really have found what a tremendous asset you are in bringing all the skills that you've learned in your military career. So with that, welcome and happy to be here and help out today. I'll be monitoring chat and helping out with IT issues as we go along.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Next, I would like to introduce our co-sponsor for this event, the California Work for Warriors program. James, all you.
All right. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Brock, and thanks for setting this up. I think this is, like she was saying, it is very challenging on the federal resume side. So it does help to have somebody that has your knowledge and your experience to be able to present this in a manner that we can all understand. So yeah, thank you for putting this thing on. My name is James. I'm with Work for Warriors. Go ahead, next slide. And our mission is to basically reduce the candidate unemployment. Basically what we do is we assist other veterans with finding employment. And so I'm a Marine Corps veteran. We've got a bunch of other veterans that work in our office that do what we do. And in a nutshell, what we do is we're essentially like a recruiter, a headhunter, if you will. It's free. It's a nonprofit. It's already been funded through federal and state grants. So with that being said, basically a veteran signs up, they're interested in our program. We then take their resume in. We work with different businesses. So for instance, Northrop Grumman, I work with them, and I would then share those positions with a veteran and say, hey, Northrop Grumman has these types of positions. And then at that point, the veteran would show interest. They'd say, hey, I'm interested in this. And then I would take your resume and send it directly to a hiring manager with Northrop. So that's in a nutshell what we do. We also help put together job fairs, do things like this, where it's constantly with an emphasis on unemployment and getting folks jobs. And we are all veterans ourselves. So we have quite a bit of buy-in and all branches are covered. So who's eligible? Pretty much everybody. Primarily what we have in our system is folks that have transitioned off active duty, as well as a lot of guardsmen. And then we do have, some veterans and retirees that are in there as well. But primarily, I would say those are the big three. And then we also help spouses or families as well. So we cover quite a bit. We've got folks throughout the state that are willing and ready to go and help out with finding employment. So we work with quite a few different companies. We all have our own different books of business that we work with. And we just want to help people get jobs, and it's a free service for the employer and for the veteran. Next slide. This is not just for Cali residents. I saw one come through, and what it is, we've got several work for warriors throughout the state. So it's a federal grant. I'll just get into the weeds a little bit. It's a federal grant that came through, and so states are finding out about it. Like we've got, for instance, we've got them in Nevada. They do, exactly what we do. There's ones in Arizona. There's ones in Texas. I mean, they're scattered throughout the United States. You just have to look and see if those states specifically offer it. Generally, if I have somebody in California that wants to go to Texas, I'll, hey, let me see your resume, and then I just get some brief information from you of what you're looking for, and then I'll push that out to Texas and let them know, hey, this veteran's interested in jobs in Texas. Here's his resume or her resume. Feel free to reach out to them, and I'll just pass you along on to them, and then they know the Texas market, obviously better than we do. But then a lot of our companies also have jobs, in other states as well. So, with that being said, we kind of have an in already with those specific companies, and we can forward your resume over. And how can we help? So what we do is I kind of explained a little bit about the relationship and the recommendations and the referrals that we have with our partners being our businesses. So a lot of these places will reach out to us and just say, hey, we want to hire a veteran or a National Guardsman. So we're like, great, cool. We'll start posting your jobs and getting it out there for folks to take a look at. And then when somebody's actually interested in it, we'll say, hey, go ahead and apply. Just send us your resume. We'll take a look at it. And this is where the resume critique and writing tips, I'll usually tell somebody, hey, I recommend doing this or doing that. Or in this case, I've even sent them to Brock, who's really good. Hey, this person, we've actually had several folks get picked up on the federal side, because I'll say, I'm not an expert in this. I don't claim to be, but I know a guy who is. And so I will then grab their resume and, send them over to Brock, and he's really good about reaching out to these people and basically schooling them up and giving them a very detailed analysis of their resume. So it's super helpful. And then on the interview prep and practice, it's just if the individual is up to it and wants to practice and do it, we're all open to helping and, doing what we can to share our knowledge and what we've heard about the positions. So we're definitely there to help on that as well. And then there are specific workshops and trainings. Like I just had an apprenticeship for a farm manager. So we get stuff like that. I mean, just totally like they came to us, totally random. And, if somebody's interested in agriculture, bam, there it is. We get them for construction. I mean, just they come to us and, we vet them and make sure it's a legit apprenticeship, and then we send it out and get it out to veterans. And then, of course, we do, your standard hiring events. So that's just a brief, next slide. It's just a brief snapshot of what we do and how we can help out with employment. So there's my contact information. If you want to just take a picture, you can always just send me your resume if you're looking for employment in the state of California. And if not, go ahead and just send it over anyways and let me know if you're looking at other states, and I can start getting you in touch with those folks. So that's all I had from my standpoint and work for warriors.
All right, thank you, James. Everybody, I did drop, Sarah looks like she just dropped his contact information along with a couple of links for the other states' Work for Warriors programs. We are trying to coordinate and collaborate with as many Work for Warriors programs as we can, even though we, the San Francisco Federal Executive Board, are focused out here on the West Coast. We're doing good things, and I want to make sure to share those good things across the country. So again, thank you, James. Don't worry if you aren't able to capture any of the information we will be discussing today. I'll send it out in a post-event email along with a list of hopefully answered questions for you. So now to the resume. Bottom line, the federal resume is the key to your federal career. Think of the federal resume as an assessment of your writing abilities, research skills, and how well you follow instructions. But perhaps federal resume development isn't the right name for what we're trying to do here. The regular federal resumes won't get you interviews or a job. You'll need more. You're going to need to put your resume on beast mode in order to set you apart from the hundreds, sometimes thousands of other applicants who are also applying to the position. And these are just normal positions. I'm not even referring to the thousands upon thousands of individuals who apply to remote positions. All right, what we will cover during today's presentation. First, we will talk about what we won't be covering, just so we don't waste time. Next, we will discuss the federal resume, dispel some myths, and cover a broad overview of the resume development process. Then we'll dive into building your federal resume. This will include sources and resources you can and should get information from, different formats, required and optional sections, etc. Next, we will discuss what specialized experience, competencies, and the supplemental questionnaire are, how to tailor, as well as how to tailor your resume to them. Then we will talk about methods of wordsmithing and adding context to your experience. Then we will go into translating your experience, which will be really important for our veterans and transitioning service members, since the inability to translate your experience into something civilian HR reviewers can understand is often the barrier preventing most veterans and service members from becoming federal employees. Finally, we'll go over some closing tips as well as some additional resources. Please hold all questions until you're given the opportunity to ask them. I don't want to miss anything that you put in the comments section earlier in the presentation, though I know Sarah will be monitoring. So thank you again, Sarah. Every so often, we'll pause for questions, and we'll have a longer Q&A at the end of the presentation. We will pause at about the 1 hour mark for a short 5-minute break. This is a long class, so buckle in. And then we will dive into the final half of our presentation. Finally, please keep your mics on mute unless you are called on or are reading for the group. What we won't be covering. I don't want to waste all of our time on things you may already know or things that already have excellent resources to answer. USA Jobs has a great series of videos explaining how to use the system, apply to jobs, search, as well as answer other questions you might have about the overall USA Jobs process. These are some useful links, and the link to the USA Jobs YouTube channel will be provided at the end of the presentation. The federal resume. Let's dispel some myths about the federal resume. The first myth is a big one that I frequently run into. A federal resume should not exceed 2 pages. This is an absolute false. A federal resume requires more information than a civilian resume, sure. Therefore, it is typically longer than 2 pages. We will go in depth on the things that should be included in your federal resume later in this presentation. Make sure you are paying attention to the announcement. Some agencies do have page limits, Homeland Security Investigations, for instance. Though, for most applications, your resume needs to be as long as it needs to be in order to show you have the qualifications and experience the agency is looking for. Next myth, I must move to Washington, D.C. if you want to work for the federal government. This is a huge false. Only about 15% of the federal jobs and federal workforce are located in Washington, D.C. and the D.C. metro area, while approximately 83% are found in multiple locations throughout the country, and the remaining 2% are outside of the United States. Yes, federal jobs do do allow you to travel. Though, for full disclosure, some agencies would like you to move to DC for a time to do a rotation through their headquarters for development promotion purposes. Next myth, resumes are scanned for keywords by automated systems. This is partially true with a caveat. Real people, human resources, and HR specialists do look at your resumes. However, some agencies use an automated system to review applications. This is also known as a supplemental questionnaire or self-assessment. So for the agencies that do use an automated system, the automated review process has two parts. An automated application review process to include all of the required areas of the applicant's eligibility and qualifications for the job. This is where you self-select if you meet the requirements for the job. This is then followed by a manual review by a human HR specialist of your or the applicant's resume to validate the information in the application package. We'll go over more about the supplemental questionnaire and how you don't self-select out of consideration later in this presentation. The next myth, a job announcement looks like it's been written for someone in mind. This is false. The job announcement is written by the hiring manager with the assistance of the human resources specialists of the agency. It is written to include the knowledge, skills, and abilities required to perform the duties of the position. While this may mean that an individual is qualified or fully qualified for the position, it doesn't mean that it was written for that person. If you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities for that job, feel free to apply. And don't think because a job opens and closes within a short window, it means they have someone. This typically happens when an agency knows they're going to be inundated with applications and there are only so many HR reviewers to go around. So they will set limits on 100 applicants, 200 applicants, 50 applicants. I'm seeing this a lot more with remote positions where a remote position will post in the morning. And then by tomorrow morning, it's already closed, even though it says it would be open for 2 weeks. That's because that's how many people apply to these positions and how fast. Next myth, federal HR specialists will know what I did in the military. Big old false. Almost to a person, no, they will not. Veterans and transitioning service members need to translate their skills and experience into something civilian HR specialists understand. It's on you to do the legwork to make them understand what you did and whether or not you are qualified for the job. Some more myths. You can't work for the federal government if you have a criminal record. False. People with criminal records are eligible to compete for the vast majority of federal jobs. During the hiring process, federal agencies are generally required to consider people with criminal records if they are among the highest rated candidates and can comply with the job requirements. There are some exceptions, of course, because of specific law enforcement statutes, laws, or other things that prohibit employment depending on the crime committed. For instance, certain federal laws, like those prohibiting treason, carry with them a lifelong ban on federal employment. Other laws prohibit federal employment for a certain number of years. The Bond Amendment imposes restrictions related to national security positions. And there are also certain positions that may require the use of firearms that a person who has been convicted of domestic violence would not be able to apply for. The next myth, you have to know someone to get a federal job. False. You do not need to know someone to get a federal job. If you are qualified for a federal position, you can write a competitive resume. Make sure you add your knowledge, skills, and accomplishments into your resume and answer the questionnaire, giving yourself all the credit you can. You have to apply correctly following the directions. You can get best qualified and referred to a supervisor without knowing anyone in the government. Next myth, networking, understanding the federal hiring. But networking, understanding the federal hiring process, asking for advice, and getting your name out there is always a way to ensure you're in the know when opportunities do pop up. I believe, and yes, Anna, it does help. It always helps. Next myth, you need a security clearance to qualify for a federal job. That is false. Not all jobs require a security clearance. You can find this information in the job announcement. However, a nice little secret that I learned, all federal positions require the candidate to undergo a suitability adjudication to determine if the individual is suitable for federal government. This means that in addition to meeting the qualifications of a job announcement, an individual is determined likely or not likely to be eligible to carry out the duties of the federal job with appropriate integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness. Also, if you're coming out of the military, most likely you have a security clearance. Don't think that that means anything. Most federal agencies do not have reciprocity between them, so they will re-adjudicate you and reinvestigate you once you come on board. When I first became a federal employee, I was adjudicated with a top secret clearance in 2020, and I retired, went to work for the EPA. I was adjudicated again for another top secret clearance a year later. So don't think just because you have one or don't, it's going to be a game stopper or that you've let it expire. Next, myth. You need to tailor your federal resume for each position. So this one's interesting. USA Jobs says this is partially true, that tailoring your resume is not required. Experience says this is always true. You must demonstrate in your resume that you're qualified for the position you're applying for, and each announcement is asking for different things. Remember, this is the only information the human resources specialist has to determine if your resume should be forwarded to the hiring manager. Next myth, jobs that close before the closing date means the agency had someone in mind. Again, this is false. Like the myth about the announcement being written for someone in mind, when a job announcement closes before the closing date, typically that means the agency received their limit of applications. Again, this happens when an agency knows they're going to be inundated with applications and there are only so many HR reviewers to go around. So has anybody heard of any other myths? Go ahead and put them in the chat box or raise your hand and come off mute. All right. Oh, we got one. John Ho, go ahead and come off mute. What myth have you heard?
Not so much. I don't want to say it's a myth, but when you were talking about the security clearance, you used the word and I know this word from division and math. You have to help me say it. Reciprocal and
There you go.
adjudication. And so I actually had this scheduled, I think, for some weeks now, and I was interviewed and was given a tentative spot, and then I was 2 hours ago. They said, "Hey, we just checked your eligibility and your clearance. Like you said, for me, it expired, but they don't have the adjudication, or they're not. What is what I'm looking for? They're only hiring those folks that already have that. So when you say like you don't have it, you don't have to have it. Does it depend on that hiring facility or that agency whether or not they want to offer adjudication or to reciprocate that clearance? If does it have to be active for them to do that, or can it? I guess that's what I was just trying to get clarity on.
So it can expire. They will adjudicate you again for whatever agency that they're looking for, but like everything, it is subject to the agency and the position. Some agencies do require that you have a clearance to come in, or they would like to see one simply because if you have a current adjudicated clearance that is valid, it is easier for them to adjudicate you through their system. So don't let it stop you. But again, there's always those one-offs that maybe an agency does require. I do know that some Department of Energy agencies do require you to come in with a certain level of clearance. So definitely pay attention to the announcement that you are listening to, or that you're reading and trying to apply to. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you.
So I see Sarah's answering some questions in the thing, but I do want to specifically note one from Xavier. I heard if you are on active duty and medically retired, there's a cool off period. So yes and no. So if you're medically retired or medically retired doesn't necessarily equate you, but I'll have to find out about that one. I'm not sure. However, if you are an active duty retiree, you are ineligible to apply to all DoD positions, Department of Defense positions, for 180 days after you retire. But that only applies to DoD positions. Anything Department of the Army, Department of Defense, Defense this, Defense that, Defense Logistics Agency, etc. Anything Department of Defense, you have to wait 180 days to apply to. However, if you are retiring, you can apply to anybody else, any other agency out there. And yes, there are waivers. They're usually at the service director level, excuse me, or the service component level. So it would be the Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Navy, that kind of thing. That would be the level that you're looking for. I can discuss more about this later, but I would recommend if you want to do that, absolutely apply. If the agency wants you, they will submit a waiver. If not, there are other opportunities for you to have. There are opportunities for you to still become a federal employee in the meantime for certain positions like FEMA. FEMA is really good for that, for temporary positions. So that way you're not wasting 6 months waiting to get on board. With that, we will continue on. Any other questions? Go ahead and feel free to put them in the chat, and Sarah will try to answer them as we're going.
Brock, we do have two other.
Oh, go ahead.
Atif Chowdhury asked, I've heard that for security clearances, having many foreign nationals as friends and colleagues can be a stumbling block.
Like all security clearances, it has anything you put into your, I believe it's still an SFFEB, which is the security clearance kind of application. They will have to look into. So yes, it can not necessarily be a stumbling block, but it can make things a little bit longer. You have to look at things from the perspective of the security personnel. If you have relations with people that aren't cleared or are obviously, maybe you don't want to make sure they're anybody on the terror watch list, for instance, because that then makes you suspect. Right answer, wrong answer, I can't say. But it is going to come down to your circle of friends. If you can guarantee your circle of friends are clear, are not security threats, you can make sure you just add the information. Be honest, be upfront. I don't have this information. Also, does having foreign friends can be an issue? Wow. Also, does having how can we obtain clearances? Also, having foreign friends can be an issue. So again, it's not an issue. It's how close you are. I have an uncle who's Cambodian, so that's just a matter of explaining what the situation is. How he's my uncle, how often I hang out with him. Do I have some of the big stuff? It's not necessarily that you're related or friends with an individual. It's whether or not exactly. Thank you, Nalantha, I believe is what it is. It's about being open and honest, and saying if you have financial ties to these people, it increases the ability to be affected or maybe influenced. So that's where those situations come from. But again, just be open and honest is the biggest thing. What was there?
One last thing on this topic. What general areas must be clear for passing background? So Cass is bringing up, what about financial or criminal background? Are those kinds of things being looked at in background checks?
They are, absolutely. However, being open and upfront is your best course of action. Yes, I have a DUI. Yes, I have, I was convicted of an armed robbery or a drug possession when I was younger. Some of those may affect your ability to get a clearance. Some of them won't. Some of them means you may just have to go into a little bit more in-depth explanation. Divorces are a big one. They destroy your credit and kind of open you up to influence. So, Gina, I will answer that later on. So that's kind of the basic thing. As long as you can show that you are not a potential insider threat, meaning you're not open and have the ability to be bribed or blackmailed, is kind of as long as you kind of answer those questions to make sure the investigator doesn't think you could be an insider threat or a potential threat, that's probably where what I would default to. So we are going to move on to the next step. And then any other questions, hold your, on this subject, we will have a longer Q&A at the end. All right, getting into it. First and foremost, everything we will discuss here is a way of doing things. Like most things, there is no single the way to complete a federal resume, which I agree is one of the things that makes federal resumes so much of a pain in the butt. So this isn't to scare you, it's just to manage expectations. Some agencies like longer resumes, as I discussed before. Some require a resume of a certain length. Some prefer narratives instead of bullets, but most will accept either. What we will discuss today are best practices that have been shown to work. Everything I will show you today, I use personally, and I use to get myself not only hired once into the federal system, but also promoted. The bottom line, again, your federal resume is your federal job application. It conveys your work history and experience to a potential employer. It is used to determine minimum qualifications as well as the best and most qualified candidates. Your resume can be unlimited length unless specified by the agency, but a good rule to follow, your federal resume needs to be as long as it needs to be in order to get the job done. You will hear me say and repeat several phrases. This is one of them. So that's kind of to get it kind of ground into your head to make sure that you understand this is one of those important things, and that you should probably kind of pay attention to it. This is another one. A federal resume must be written and tailored to the announcement and show specific and relevant accomplishments and information. This is why that one myth that USA Jobs said was partially true is actually completely true. Relevant equals experience, knowledge, skill, and training that applies to the job you're applying for. If it's not relevant, I recommend you leave it out. There is a reason this gets its own slide. I know that when I started this process, I included everything I did when I was in the service, no matter how small. While much of it was relevant, there was plenty that was not because of the career fields I was looking into. The federal resume is your first and potentially only impression with the agency. Your resume is the best method to market yourself to potential employers. It must show how you meet the minimum qualifications and must include examples of how, when, and where you use the competency or skill. If it's not in your resume, assume that it doesn't matter and it doesn't happen. It didn't happen. It is not how you think, how you meet the qualifications. It's how your resume articulates how you meet the qualification. This is a big one. No one will assume what you did. You have to be clear about articulating what you did. And when developing your federal resume, don't go for the minimum qualifications. You want to shoot for the very highly qualified, which exceeds minimum qualifications, or the best qualified, which means substantially exceeds minimum qualifications. Again, the rule is if it's not in your resume, it doesn't count. Here are some big ones. Do not include things like photographs or videos of yourself. Do not include any sensitive information, PII, age of, date of birth, marital status, protected health information, religious affiliation, social security number, etc., in your resume. It will mean your resume will be removed from consideration. So here is a big one that I've been discussing with many HR managers for a while. LinkedIn profiles. Do not include them. Why? Because if a hiring manager or someone within the agency clicks on your LinkedIn profile, what immediately pops up? A picture of you and a lot of information where someone could probably figure out your age, your marital status, religious affiliation, etc. So that's another thing that I make sure to push out. Keep those LinkedIn profiles off your federal resume. Unless, of course, the agency wants it. I have not seen an agency specifically say they would like to see it. However, I've seen many announcements and applications that state leave it off. So always leave it off. Always leave your, yes, exactly. Year of graduation, Sarah, we will get into that. There are always ways to slice things thin. So I understand what your ideas are about that. However, as someone who graduated college late in life, that's not necessarily an automatic slam dunk. All right. Where could you find information to put in your resume? Well, for the veterans and or transitioning service members, in addition to your joint service transcript, you can also use your VMET or verification of military experience and training. Links to these will be included at the end of the presentation. Additional places to get information for your resume include annual performance evaluations, end of course evaluations, course syllabus, etc. And don't forget any awards you received. Those should definitely go into your resume. By a show of hands, anywhere else that you could possibly find information to put into your federal resume? James Gilbert, go ahead.
I was going to say FAST, the actual location where they have a lot of job announcements that are actually GS tailored. They say exactly what they're looking for different positions. And if you've done a job in the military, a lot of them are associated with that. Like you can type 25 Alpha and it brings up the duties and descriptions of 25 Alpha. So you can actually do exactly what you're talking about, tailoring it for the civilian world.
Perfect. All right. I like it. Yeah. So what is that? FAST, F-A-S-T?
Yes, FAST.
Okay, cool. So that's one new one. I'll have to check that out and add it up to my list. All right, just as an example, as discussed, one place to find excellent information is your joint service transcript. It explains in civilian terminology what you did. Here's an example from my own background in JST. Evaluations, I saw that somewhere in there. Fitness reports are also a great place to find your achievements, but you have to be sure to rewrite your experiences in civilian terms. Jeff, absolutely. Volunteer positions, we'll get to that here in a second. Civilian and military course completion certificates, 1059s, etc., will typically include the skills, tasks, and competencies you were required to demonstrate in order to graduate. The way I look at it, and so does the federal government, if you attended a course and that course required you to demonstrate certain competencies in order to graduate, you can put those competencies in your resume. Yes, it looks like James Gilbert put that in there, Xavier. Don't forget to include any experience you might have in leadership roles in social and civic organizations. I do understand that the religious affiliation, you want to keep it out of your resume. However, this is one of those fine lines that you may have to decide what you want to put in. Especially if you have volunteer or other unpaid experiences with your church or local organization. Don't forget projects with your local schools or programs, things you do with your kids. Projects like speaking engagements, or if you have writing credits. And don't forget, again, if you have any professional academic challenges or successes you had while in college or high school. Federal government, yes, is there a universal template for federal government? Molly, I will share a template that I use and recommend. Some agencies actually require you to use the USA Jobs resume wizard on USA Jobs. So again, that's one of those things you want to make sure to pay attention to the announcement for. Speaking of the USA Jobs announcement, I don't particularly like it. I don't like the USA Jobs resume builder because it's not as using a Word file. There are a bunch of templates out there if you look online. The biggest thing to consider when deciding what format to use is find a format that allows you to best convey your information. So again, there's only a lot of a way to do things, not the way to do things. If you still need one, feel free to reach out to me following this webinar and I'll send you the format that I use and recommend. So this is in my notes, but I will probably send that out anyway to everyone just to see an example that I use and has been proven to work. Up front, the federal resume does not need to be flashy, and you should avoid any cells, text boxes, colors, tables, etc. These can actually take away from what you're trying to convey, and that is your experience. Your federal resume font should be black in color, 11 to 12 point, Arial, Times, or New Roman or Garamond. Garamon's a pretty good one. It looks nice, it flows well, and just somehow that it's compressed, it actually lets you fit more information on a page. Again, there should be no text boxes, tables, colored boxes in your federal resume. Finally, read the fine print. Some agencies have different requirements like page length, if they accept non-USA job systems resumes, and date formats. Always read the entire announcement carefully. One of the reasons also I don't like the USA Jobs Resume Builder format is because it only allows you to put month and date in the dates to and from dates, employment dates. This can become an issue, but I will wait to save that until later. Building your federal resume, the format. So someone asked, is there a template the government prefers? Yes, this is it. Your federal resume must include contact information, which I also call the introduction, your work experience, your education, any volunteer experience, academic awards, achievements, and memberships, as well as references. You should plan on including at least 3 professional references in every resume you submit. The federal resume should also include professional training. That should include the training name, location, sponsor organization, start and end date. This one could be in month and year, as well as the number of hours. Certifications. You need to include granting organization, the location, dates, the certification is in effect, and the year, month and year you earned it. Military schools are an interesting one. You need to include the organization, location, city, dates you completed or graduated, as well as a short summary of what you learned, the skills and competencies. This is basically telling the organization why they should care you took this military school. Gina, hold that to the end. Good question for the end. And also kind of question, HR. Same thing with you, Anna. Hold those until the end because those are good questions. All right, your contact information. Contact information or introduction should include your full name listed on your records, address. Some agencies consider full street address PII, so be sure to look at the fine print. Me personally, I only include city and state, and then later on, if the HR folks want my actual address, I will send it to them. Telephone number and email address. So email address is one of those interesting little things you don't think about while you're in the service. You want an email address that you can carry with you after you separate from the military or college. That's why you should never use your .mil. However, you want to make sure your email address is a professional one. Get rid of your Rockstar email address, like 420 Sergeant Rock Rules or QD4U. Those aren't very professional, so you want to leave them out. For those new to the federal hiring system, there are many special hiring authorities that you can use that can give you a head start when applying. For veterans, when it comes to your resume, veterans preference and special hiring authorities are 2 separate things and serve 2 different purposes. Veterans preference gives eligible veterans preference in appointment over many other applicants. In the competitive service, which is basically the federal system, when agencies use a numerical rating and ranking system to determine the best qualified applicants for a position, an additional 5 or 10 points are added to the numerical score of qualified preference eligible veterans. Veterans preference does not guarantee veterans a job, and it does not apply to internal agency actions such as promotions, transfers, reassignments, and reinstatements. Special hiring authorities, also known as hiring paths, help the federal government hire individuals that represent our diverse society. Special hiring authorities include veteran-specific paths like the Veterans Recruitment Appointment, VRA, and other 30% or more, and the 30% or more disabled veteran hiring authority. Other special hiring authorities include hiring authorities for recent graduates, individuals with disabilities, or the Schedule A hiring authority, as well as Peace Corps and AmeriCorps alumni. Special hiring authorities are also known as non-competitive hiring authorities. This means that anyone who meets the minimum eligibility for the position can be selected so long as they qualify for one of the applicable hiring authorities. The VFEC, our Veterans Federal Employment Collaborative, has helped more than 30 people get hired to positions that did not even have open announcements on USA Jobs using the individuals with disabilities and the 30% or more disabled hiring authorities. Language proficiency levels are also good to include if relevant to the position you're applying for. Current and active security clearances, as we discussed, aren't that important for the federal government, since nearly every federal agency will reinvestigate you as part of the onboarding process. Including your clearance and adjudication date shows the agency that they shouldn't have any issues when and if you are reinvestigated by their organization. So that's why it's good to include that. Again, make sure you read the fine print of the announcement, include everything they want to see and nothing they don't. Some agencies consider your street address and LinkedIn profile to be PII and will remove you from consideration. Questions. I see one right now. Speaking from experience, they will not contact you with the email on your resume. They will reach out via the email on USA Jobs. When doing onboarding, we'll also use the USA Jobs associated email. James, that is an awesome point. And yes, you're also pointing out why you shouldn't use your .mil email address to sign up for USA Jobs. So me personally, I use my my Yahoo address because I'm old. You know, Yahoo's one step above AOL, which I'm sure will get canceled soon, but whatever. Working for government contracting company, do they fall under these categories or just open to the public? Melissa, I'm not sure. I don't want to give you bad information. However, I think it would be subject to whatever the contracting agency uses. The hand we have up. Who do we have? I've got Nilantha. I don't want to butcher your name. Is that right? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's correct. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a question. So if I'm applying for a particular position on USA Jobs, and do I include like unrelated experience on my resume? So I have a follow-up question on that. So if I am not putting those things, or if I have unemployment in certain periods, do I have to explain my gaps in employment in my resume?
I would recommend yes. So look at your resume as if you were the hiring manager. If I see someone working for 5-10 years in a position, and then all of a sudden there's a 2-year gap, and then working in another position, I kind of want to know what's up. Were you in jail? Were you busted? The whole COVID thing threw everything up in the air. You can simply put from date to date, taking care of a family member, from date to date on a sabbatical, from date to date going to school, things like that. You want to try and leave as many questions out of your resume as possible and answer whatever questions going in. Shay, I believe is the name. Is there a criteria matrix related to the Schedule A eligibility? I'm going to let you in on a little secret and everybody else in on a little secret. And this is definitely important for those of you on the line who are still active duty service members. The Schedule A hiring authority is awesome. It is a persons with individuals with disabilities and is not a veteran-centric thing. So it is separate from veterans. Those of you with a 30% or more VA disability are eligible for a Schedule A appointment. What you need is a Schedule A letter. You can Google Schedule A letter example, or let me know, and I will include an example later on in this presentation, a link to it later on in this presentation. With that said, to make you eligible for Schedule A, I did the research and went down the rabbit hole and found out that anything that would get you more than 30% VA disability would also qualify you for a Schedule A appointment. We're talking big ones like anxiety, PTSD, amputations, but also little ones like irritable bowel syndrome, GERD. These are actually listed as things that would entitle you to a Schedule A appointment. The reason that's important for you transitioning service members, the dirty little secret that I learned, the VA does not consider you a veteran until you are actually out of the service and separated. They will not grant you a disability rating until you are out of the service, which means you can't utilize that special hiring authority to apply while you're applying on your transition out of the service. However, you can use the Schedule A hiring authority. All you need, again, is a doctor to say, yes, you're good to go. Russ, Brock, I'm assembling questions by topic, not ready yet, but when you want to take questions that we've missed, call on me. Roger, Sarah, thank you very much. As always, she is awesome with efficiency. So any questions I missed, I will go back to hit them. All right, building your federal resume. Bottom line up front, it is a myth that military and civilian experience are different. I say again, it is a myth that military and civilian experiences are different. All professional work experience is work experience. This includes part-time and even unpaid experience as well. You want to express that you have the specialized experience the agency is looking for, but saying that that experience was gained in the military makes them think your experience is only limited to the military. You want the agency to know you have the experience they're looking for. Where you got it doesn't matter. You want to begin with your current position and work backwards. It's called a reverse chronological order resume. Your resume should cover the last 10 years of work experience, but this is only a recommendation. If shorter than 10 years because of you're just new to the workforce, maybe you're in high school, make sure you include any jobs or volunteer activities you participated while in school. If you need to go back farther than 10 years to show you have the qualifications, do so. Your resume can be in bullet or in narrative format. You need to figure out what is the best way for you to convey your experience. Don't forget to include any part-time or unpaid experiences that might overlap with your full-time work. This is big for reservists and National Guard soldiers that may have M-Day or TPU assignments in addition to their full-time jobs, careers, or even if you're an AGR that had a full-time duty in one location and a leadership duty in another. This is especially, This can be especially important when you're part of a gig that might require you to demonstrate vastly different skills and competencies than your full-time job. Again, as an AGR, which is active guard reserve, active duty soldier, my full-time job at one point was as a battalion operations and human resources and logistics officer. But my M-Day assignment was as a company commander. So those two things had vastly different things. So I definitely wanted to include all of the competencies, skills, and experience that I did as a company commander, but also all the knowledge, the competencies and skills and experience I had as that operation and logistics officer. Next, when developing your federal resume, each professional experience must include a job title. For the military veterans out there, civilians won't know what a sergeant major, NCOIC, watch NCO, petty officer, or staff sergeant is. For this, you got to write in civilian terms. Try to figure out what the job actually is. Instead of NCO, try first line supervisor, senior instructor, organization administrative and logistics manager. It also has to include the employer's name. This would be the only thing in your resume that you can and should use military terms. For instance, if you worked for the 1002nd Transportation Company, that's the company you work for. Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command, that's the organization you work for. Bravo 152nd General Support Aviation Battalion, that is the agency you work for. So it's acceptable to use military terms if those terms are what the company was actually or organization was actually called. Dates, you want to have start and end date for every position. The only position you won't have start and end date would be your current position, and that one would be start date and then present. I don't like the USA Jobs Resume Builder because it will only allow you to put the month and year. Some agencies, however, want month, day, year, and will actually toss your resume if you don't have all three. Your resume and experience should also include your supervisor's name and phone number. Don't be afraid to put no as to whether or not the agency can contact your supervisor, but be prepared to answer why. This is especially important if you have a current position. Your current position, you're not necessarily wanting your supervisor to know you're looking for another job. But again, try to avoid red flags. If you have no on all of the contacts, that's going to kind of throw up a red flag to whatever hiring manager is looking at your resume. Using this example from my resume, as a federal employee, I include both my pay band, which is GS, my series, which is which is 0342, my grade, which is 12, and my step, which is my pay step, as well as my salary. So it is the same as the rest of the experience blocks. I'm pretty OCD and anal retentive, so I like everything to match and look the same. Since this particular position was a federal position, I make sure to include the statement, this is a federal position. Note, for the purposes of federal resumes, military service and government contracting positions are not considered federal positions. So if it's a military position, don't put this is a federal position underneath it. This is another example from my resume. Notice that I don't have this is a federal position underneath it. Again, that is because even though you might be or have been active duty, you're not considered a federal employee when it comes to federal hiring. This example shows how you can add part-time or reservist National Guard positions that run concurrent with your full-time job. Remember, the salary and hours information here is considered typical and should be an average of the hours per week you work and the pay you received. So you'll have to do some math on this one. For example, since I was AGR again, or Active Guard Reserve, I also had a part-time National Guard position with duties and responsibilities far different than my full-time position. Because I was active duty, I didn't get paid for my M-Day job, so I show that by including unpaid in the salary section. For those who have been activated, put on orders for an extended period of time, etc., I recommend you include those as achievements within your experience. Another thing that I haven't mentioned is pay scale. Again, no one knows what a pay scale is. No one knows, the civilian won't know what an E9 is or an O3. However, and this is actually kind of a misnomer. I've shown you some bad info. This actually has an army militarism company commander. No one knows what that is. So this was actually a mistake on my part in my resume. I used a military title versus a title of that civilians would understand. However, there are documentation and publications out there that kind of show what certain ranks and grades are equivalent to. So to assist, I recommend you can use a situation like this. In this particular position, it was an O3 position, which is in the federal scale equivalent to a GS-12. What are your questions at this time? Okay, Anna, I will get to that actually here in a little bit. So Kimberly, oh, Kim, hey. Yes, you should include your salary because it is one of those things that shows an agency and how they can use in their world to try and figure out what your experience is equivalent to. So certain GS levels at certain step levels get paid a certain amount. Now, if you worked a job that is equivalent to that certain amount, that helps the HR person reviewing your resume. Actually, I wonder if I should check follow even 3 to 5 years. Nice. So that actually is one of those methods to help your HR reviewer qualify and quantify your experience. So you cannot have too much information in your resume to help the HR reviewer out. Not including your salary is just one thing, that one little bit of information or one little clue that might actually be held against you, but it's not required. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, I thought I was on mute. Okay, so so we have a number of questions, and I'm gonna give you a category first. So under the category of types of eligibility, there were 2 questions. Does direct hire really make it easier to get a job? And how does feds hire vets work?
I'm not sure. Feds Hire Vets is a website, as far as I know. So I'd not. Yeah, through the Department of Labor. I know they assist. They always they're always hosting things that assist people, resume development webinars, job fairs, things like that. So I mean, that's how they help. I'm not sure what else is there. And what was the first part of that question?
Does having direct hire really make it easier to get a federal job?
It can, like everything else, subject to interpretation. However, as a direct hire authority, that allows an agency to choose anyone who meets the minimum qualifications for the position. So the answer to that is could be. So it depends on your resume. Make sure your resume is good. Making sure you do everything you can to show you are also the best qualified, because you're still going to have to go through the assessment process to see if you are the most or best qualified. Go ahead. What's next? Sorry.
Okay. A question about security clearance. Back to where we were in the beginning. For previous federal employees with a security clearance, how long is that clearance good for? And it's not. I'm going to start with saying it's the clearance isn't independent. The clearance isn't related to you. It's related to the position. You in that position, right, Brock? So every position you might have to restart one just because you've had one.
Yes, and it's a good rule of thumb just to assume the agency is going to redo your adjudication and reinvestigate you. That's in my experience. Again, two federal jobs, both federal jobs re-adjudicated me within 6 months. So and that was after the first one adjudicated me as a top secret. So just assume you're going to be re-adjudicated, and then you probably won't have any issues. Just be prepared to fill out the same paperwork. It's just unfortunately that's the monster. If you want to work for the federal government, red tape and bureaucracy is some of the information that you're going to have to deal with. Xavier pushed a blog post out. Awesome. So hopefully that helps. Go ahead, Sarah. Next question.
Okay. There's a couple about tailoring your resume. Do you want to hold off until you get to that section and we'll go back to those?
Yes, please.
And what to include in my resume? Let's wait for those. I have a question that you haven't gotten to. Civilian placement within military. How to get civilian work within, so in other words, a civilian position in a military organization. What kinds of questions would HR ask from references?
Oh, are those two separate questions?
It's the same person. It's Anna.
Okay. Okay. The first question, Anna, is it's just like any federal job. As a retiree, you can't apply for 180 days after you retire. However, applying for civilian federal positions is the same as applying for any federal position. They will be listed on USA Jobs, and they will you'll just go through the regular hiring process. I know I've been helping OSI for the Air Force, CID for the Army, as well as the Army civilian something. Sorry, I'm acronymed out today. But yes, so that's how. Just as you will just apply the normal way. Those jobs are posted to USA Jobs as well. Next question.
Okay. I'm gonna. Sean asked made the comment about Schedule A. Sean, I'm just gonna leave that for the moment. There was an interesting question about recruitment letters. I'm going to hold that one off just for whoever asked. Sorry, I didn't capture that. We'll come back to that. So the last one, Brock, before I'll let you go to your next section. Amar wants to know, he's an IT project manager and he has his master's degree that he received in India. Does that degree need to be assessed before he applies to any position? And if so, how do you do that?
I will tell you right now, I have no idea. That is a great question. Sarah has that question down, and I will make sure to keep your email. Sarah, if you could put a name next to that. Yep. And if you want to add your email address to the chat box, we'll connect an email to it. And when I send our post event hot wash down or out, I will make sure to keep that. Application, qualification. There you go. Aletha, put it in there. Great. There was one more I wanted to hit, Sarah. I don't know if you wrote it down from Shay. For previous supervisors who do not have contact info, should you list the last contact number of your old office? So the answer to that is maybe. So you can, if you don't know or have access to that individual, absolutely. You want to put some number to the agency or organization that you worked for. They'll call, the reference will be, hey, this person's not here anymore. Cool. If you know that individual's email address or current phone number, include it. So it's up to you and how you want to capture that. It's just a way. A myth or fact, don't list more than 40 hours per week. So here's the bottom line with listing hours. The U.S. federal, and we'll get more into this of why in a little bit. The federal government considers full-time employment 35 to 40 hours. So listing anything less than 35 hours will not count you towards full-time employment. Listing anything above 40 hours when your standard duty schedule is 40 hours is actually taking an achievement that you could be putting into your resume. For instance, if you're an active duty individual and your job is supposed to be 9 to 5 or whatever to whatever normal job duties, but because your the mission dictates that you work routinely 12 hours a day for extended periods of time, that is a pretty awesome achievement that I would want to put into my resume. So Shay, did that answer your question? Oh, okay. Yes, is my email Yates and Yakima. Okay, cool. So Amar's email is there, and James, go ahead. This will be the last one. James, I'll let James Gilbert go ahead and make a statement, and then we will continue on.
So the security clearances are good for the TS is good for 5 years. The secret is good for 10. The secret's 10 years. If you go between agencies and you have a clearance, they can transfer them over without any kind of adjudication, depending on what agency it is. If it's in the same realm. One thing is, if you're going from agency to agency and in the job that you're in doesn't require security clearance, it becomes a deactive security clearance. It's still in the system as active if it's within the 5 or 10 year scope. And then you'll have to do the SF-86 from the date your last one was approved. It's not all the way back to the 10 years beyond for a TS and 5 years for a secret. It's only from the time that you actually submitted the last, but if it's still active and the system is active. I'm going through the process right now. I have a TSSI right now. I moved to a different agency, and all they had to do is check the scope of work. I had to do a update from the time I submitted approved previously to today.
Awesome. All right, cool. Thank you. And Amar, go ahead. One question, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, so the question was about like that Indian qualification that needs to be assessed, and if so, like where shall we get it done? And also like specifically for any surveys when it comes to IT project management, they are not really clear about the requirements. So how do we know, like after applying, how long that particular agency takes, time just to call us for an interview?
That's a great question. If you could hold that one actually to the end, I think I've got information on that later in the presentation. If I don't, let me answer that here in a second.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, hey, so we're actually not halfway there yet. We're pushing the hour mark. I want to get through a couple more slides and then take a break. So we're going to push through this real quick. But I want to make sure that I'm not going to push through so quick that I'm not able to answer any questions and or allow you time to digest what we're putting out there. So we're going to move along. If you got to go to the bathroom, please do. Then come back and we'll hit this up. We'll continue on. All right, building your federal resume. Before we get into detail on methods of writing quality experience bullets, let's talk some generalities. Solid federal resumes are about 3 things: detail, detail, and detail. Your experiences need to include examples of what you managed, what you did, and or the tasks you completed, not what you were responsible for or assisted with. Your resume needs to describe the scope of your duties, how many employees you supervised, how much money you managed, were you a decision maker, and all this needs to be done including examples. It should include examples of your accomplishments, awards, and recognitions you've earned, as well as details or a summary of why you earned them. Make sure you use quantifiable metrics wherever possible. For instance, improved X% by Y% within Z months. What's the word I've used a couple of times there? That's right, examples. If you're not going to give examples of how, where, when you used a competency or skill, you might as well not even include that competency or skill in your resume. Bottom line up front, nothing you include in a list of skills or in your summary or objective statement will count towards your assessing your qualifications. Even though many templates and examples you will see, to include my own, have lists of skills, competencies, or achievements. Don't think you're going to be able to hit the easy button and put all of the required competencies and keywords in one of these lists and have it count towards your qualifications. Even if you're using one of these templates, make sure you're mentioning everything that you have in those lists, in those sections, in your experience section with examples of when and where you use them. Describe how you use the programmer skill, in what environment, how often, if you were considered an expert or not. Did people come to you for advice on these matters or competencies? Were the reports you wrote for managers or senior executives? Were those reports used to make decisions? Again, anything you put into one of these lists or summaries will not count towards your experience or qualifications. Again, think of your federal resume, as a test, the first of several challenges you need to overcome in order to become a federal employee. Every test has questions, and understanding those questions can be key to passing or failing. For federal resumes, the test questions are made up of specialized experience, competencies, required training if applicable, and the supplemental questionnaire. First, without the required specialized experience as defined in the announcement, it is unlikely that your application will be considered best qualified and referred to the hiring manager. The book definition of specialized experience is a type of work experience that is directly related to and relevant to the position which you are applying for. Next, sections in the job announcement that refer to how you will be qualified and evaluation factors and competencies are telling you the metrics that the agency is going to use to grade your resume. When grading, the agency will determine how well your resume describes how, when, how often you have used the competencies the agency is looking for. Next, you will need to ensure you have any required courses, training, if applicable. This section includes any special or specific schooling, education requirements, certifications, etc. Finally, the supplemental questionnaire selections you make should accurately describe your training and experience carrying out the task. We will go over each of these in detail. Dates. In the federal government, 52 weeks is an important benchmark. For Fed HR folks, 52 weeks of experience equals 52 35 to 40-hour work weeks. This is why when reviewing HR professionals need to know your employment dates, your exact employment dates. Don't think you're getting away with anything by only putting the month and year for your employment dates. For instance, putting January 2020 to December 2020 on your resume won't get you assessed at 52 weeks of experience. It will get you assessed at 44. Why? Because federal HR personnel typically default your start date to the last date of the month and your end date to the first. So by putting January 2020 to December 2020, you're basically putting down January 31st, 2020 to December 1st, 2020, which equals 44 weeks. Even if you left mid-month, you want to get credit for the time you worked. Which brings us to the hours worked per week. In order for you to be assessed as having 52 weeks time and grade, or 52 weeks of experience, they need to know how many hours a week you worked. The federal government has determined full-time, again, means 35 to 40 hours a week. Putting anything less means your experience won't be graded as full-time. What about more than 40 hours a week? I know we had a question about that earlier. If your normal duties require you to work more than 40 hours a week, say so, but say it as an achievement, not as a normal thing. Why? Because we understand you may have worked 60 hours a week, but what were you scheduled to work? If under 60 hours, put what you should have been working, and then put as a bullet how you routinely worked additional hours in order to ensure success of the organization's mission. Back to the example, what if you don't have 52 weeks of experience, like in the first example? Here we see that the applicant will only get credit for 24 weeks of experience, but needs 52 weeks of experience in one of the specialized experiences. For many of us, Military veterans or not, we often do similar things in every job. You may have conducted quarterly performance evaluations in multiple positions, or maybe use certain management skills, technical or computer skills, report writing, etc. It's important to include what you did in every experience that you did it. It doesn't matter if you duplicate experience if you did it. Duplicate the bullets, duplicate the narrative, however you want to do it. If you did something in more than one experience, include it in both. By including conducted quarterly performance evaluations in both positions, this resume would get assessed at having 104 weeks of experience. If you're shooting for more than just meeting the minimum qualifications, this is how you do it. Any questions? Sarah, do we have any questions? Oh, all right, Amar, go ahead. Amar's got his hand up. Amar, go ahead.
No, I don't have any questions. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Hand down. All right. We've got no more questions.
How
go
would
ahead.
you word deployment? Xavier wants to know. Would you word deployment? I think that's.
I'll knock that out right now.
Civilians.
No worries. So Xavier, a deployment is what it is. It's you're conducting overseas operations. You know, you're deployed. I deployed to Cuba over my time. It's still on my resume. You know, it is what it is. Sometimes you do have to use military terms. I deployed overseas to do X and Y. With that said, even if it was a combat deployment, there's a lot of skills and things you did during that deployment that you can include on your federal resume. Risk management. Everyone does risk management while they're deployed. Things like that. Would hours be excessive? Again, if that's what you did, be honest about it. Now, if part of your job was to work 60 hours a week, you know, I tend to default to 40. But if you actually spent 60 hours a week, that's what you did. So again, it's all about what's most comfortable for you and how you convey your knowledge, training, and experience. Did that answer your question? MS degree. Yes, it would. Sorry, I just clicked on something and messed everything up. Would specialized grad school be specialized experience depending on the job? So Gina, that depends on the job that you're applying to. If it will state in the specialized experience that is a master's in something is required. So yes, it would be. That's one of those things that would be specialized experience, and that would be in your resume. All right, moving on. Yes.
One hand up from Kim.
All right, Kim, go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my question. My question is, does it look bad if I were to apply for multiple positions in the same agency?
I honestly, I don't think so. I don't want to say yes or no on that, but ultimately you are trying to find a job. If you are qualified for a position, I coach and mentor veterans and transitioning service members to apply until you get the federal position and continue to apply until you get the position you want. So, take that for how.
It's not. I'll add it's not a problem, and especially in larger. It's not a problem, and in larger agencies, you're going to have different people evaluating it. You know, there's an army of HR specialists, and so. But even if they knew, it would be fine. That's not a problem. And Brock, if you want to just keep going until a break, I will capture. And I know, folks, there are questions that we haven't gotten to, so I'm working on that document. And Brock and I will go over that during the break.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Let's see. Multiple position. Did I already discuss this? Yes, I did. So random new slide in there. I'm going to clean that up. All right. Next. But how do you locate the specialized experience within the announcement? Most USA Jobs webinars and classes will explain what is meant by specialized experience, so I'm not going to go too far in depth on this one. Here are some examples from this particular announcement. take a look at the first line of the page. You must have 1 year of specialized experience equivalent to at least the next lower grade GS11. This means your resume must not only show you have the experience that the agency is looking for the grade at the grade you're applying to, but also must show you would have met the time and grade requirements for the next lower grade. How do you make sure you're meeting this requirement? By ensuring your entire resume to include past positions is tailored to the announcement. Neglecting this is the reason most people receive those do not meet minimum requirements for this position emails. I will discuss this more here in a moment. Remember the first required specialized experience. You must have 1 year of specialized experience at the level of difficulty and responsibility equivalent to the GS11 grade level in the federal service. This is where most people get derailed because they spend all of their time writing their resume to the position they are currently applying to, and then neglect to ensure all of their past positions show the applicable growth and qualifications required by the announcement. Many announcements will lay out what experience at the next lower level looks like, but many don't. This means researching what experience looks like at the next lower level. OPM has an entire library on competencies and skills at various levels and within certain series. You can also gain insight from looking at lower level positions within the same agency or job series on USA Jobs. The slide here shows a short example of how to show progression in your resume. For instance, current position bullet writes policies for the organization. Your most recent past bullet would read enforces policies for the organization. But you're probably thinking, okay, but how do we tailor? Well, let's take the specialized experience preparing presentations, white papers, and reports for personnel of all levels. Think about your own experience. All right, I'm going to ask one person. So who can give me an example of a potential resume bullet from your own experience that you can utilize preparing presentations, white papers, and reports for personnel at all levels? Okay, Mike, go ahead. First one up, first one seen.
Okay, can you hear me? Sorry.
I can, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that stood out to me when you just posted this is SOPs. So standard operating procedures that you write when you take over a section. I'm Army, so I'm talking about S4. I'm logistics. So when I took over, I rewrote the standard operating procedure for the office. So when you translate that, that's like writing policies.
Perfect. No, that's great. No, I like it. So let's go on. So here's an example. From the example, we see the applicant addressed preparing presentations, how often they did it, as well as all the levels they presented to. This example, prepared and verbally presented weekly organizational status briefings and reports to organization employees, managers, and executives. I utilized Microsoft PowerPoint to develop briefings and Microsoft Word to develop multiple white papers on equipment statuses written to the applicable level of audience. So the applicant explained what systems and applications they used, as well as how they both wrote and verbally briefed the information. From this bullet, I see the person has technical competence, experience with oral and written communication, experience using Microsoft Office products, as well as experience speaking to employees, managers, and executives. However, there is something very important missing. What is it?
It is supposed to be reporting. The reporting has to be in place for after all doing all these things, like where do we stand after having all these conversations and updates and everything together with different types of stakeholders and different types of like managers or leadership that needs to know a lot about the progress. This is what is missing. Okay,
definitely one thing that's missing. Yes. So in this bullet example is purposefully missing quantifiable metrics as well. What was improved by all this? How much? How long did it take? In short, this, yes, quantitative and qualitative. Yes, I'm sorry, quantitative, excuse me. Yes, results. So the bullet is missing the so what of why it was included in a resume. It's missing the relevance. Next, we'll discuss how your resume will be graded. Reading through the announcement, you are told something to the effect of you will be evaluated on the basis of your level of competency in the following areas. These areas are also called competencies. Most announcements will be different, so these are only examples. For this particular announcement, they're looking for adaptability, information management, problem solving, and technical competence. All right, but based on these competencies, what is the announcement looking for? What do they mean? Basically, you need to learn the definition. OPM lists the definitions of their competencies and what they mean in a document called the Multi-Purpose Occupational Systems Analysis Inventory, close-ended, or Mosaic Competencies List. A link will be included at this at the end, so you don't need to worry about writing it down. So for instance, for this competency, the Mosaic Guide lists the definition as understands changes in work, tasks, situations, and environment, as well as the basis for change, persists towards solution and goals in changing circumstances, acknowledges new information and adjusts responses accordingly, adjusts timelines, results, and expectations appropriately to changing needs, overcomes yeah, right. Sorry, Kim, I just saw that. That's funny. Say it fast. Overcomes obstacles to achieve results. Thinks and acts effectively under pressure. Identifies ways to incorporate new practices into existing framework. Remains flexible and open to new ideas and encourage others to value change. So, based on this definition of adaptability, what might a bullet look like? A potential bullet could read like this: conducted daily reviews of programs and program tasks with subordinate managers, making as needed adjustments to timelines and expectations based on new information, identified and redirected staffing challenges that would have prevented timely completion of the project, developed new practices that fit into existing constraints, and implemented changes based on project segment location. Result: project was delivered on time and under budget. Again, I left out some metrics on purpose so we could focus on the wording. So going back to our definition, based on this slide, do you think the bullet clearly articulates the applicant's ability to understand changes in the work areas, situations, and environment, as well as basis for change, persist towards solution and goals in changing circumstances, acknowledge new information and adjust responses accordingly, adjust timeline, results, and expectations appropriately to changing needs, overcome obstacles to achieve results, and think and act effectively under pressure, identify ways to incorporate new practices into existing work, and remain flexible and open to new ideas and encourage others to value change. So what do we think? Do we think that this bullet hits all those aspects? Throw me a hands up if you agree. Russ, thank you for that. That's the exact address. Cool. All right, moving on. Our next competency is problem solving. Its definition is identifies problems, determines accuracy and relevance of information, uses sound judgment to generate and evaluate alternatives and make recommendations. What could a bullet look like? Think about that for a second. So based on this definition, what could a bullet look like? How about something like this? Here, our imaginary applicant has included this bullet: evaluated business practices, processes devoted to scheduling, as well as analysis of workflows and value added, impact, and utility derived from the cost benefit analysis. Coordinated with regional team, provided guidance and directed development of regional scheduling system for scheduling of 3 HSDP 12 sites across California. Result: increasing customer service, receiving no negative customer service experience CSX comments while in the position, and scheduling system being adopted by 2 other EPA regions. So does our bullet match the competency, what the competency is looking for? Again, the problem solving definition is identifies problems, determines accuracy and relevance of information, uses sound judgment to generate and evaluate alternatives and make recommendations. So does this bullet meet that kind of meet that goal or hit that goal minus the metrics? Give me a hands up if you agree, or throw a question in the comment if you don't. All right, got a bunch of people. All right, cool. Got some phone calls. So Kim, I will get to that actually here in a little bit. All right, so what are your questions about competencies at this time? So I will, first person up, I've got, where's that people? All right, so first question is Nate, go ahead.
So when you are writing these, I know there are like if you look in the PDs, there are KSAs. I have been told by other people that you should mirror those directly. Is that true?
Yes, yes, it
like
is.
Verbatim?
Well, as not necessarily verbatim, but utilizing the terminology that they use, but you must include your knowledge, your training, your examples, your, that kind of thing. So it is good to utilize that information from the announcement in your resume, but utilizing information that you actually did, what you did, where you experienced it, what you did, held on to things.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, go ahead. Chris B.
Okay, so for a position or an announcement that says, sometimes they say you don't have to, or they don't list all of the KSAs, like when you click on the how will you be evaluated, do you recommend, so like for an example, if there's like a program analyst position that I'm consistently applying for, if they don't list the KSAs, do you recommend that I use a resume without the ones that I've used for the same position, but they listed the KSAs? I hope my question's making sense. So it could be the same position, and sometimes they list the KSA, sometimes they don't. They'll say you do not have to address each KSA, or you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
Well, yes, it does. It comes down to what makes you the most comfortable. I know that's not a real answer. Sorry, but does adding that information, is that information relevant to the position you're applying for? And does that show that does it show that you meet the minimum qualifications, or does it show that you exceed the minimum qualifications?
Got it. That's a great answer. It exceeds it. Okay, I'm going to stick with it.
There you go. So, hey, everybody, we've been going strong here for an hour and a half. KSA is knowledge, skills, and achievements. I want to give everybody a 5-minute break. So to use the bathroom, mostly because I'm sitting here doing the dance in my own chair. So I have 4:36. So we will get started again at 4:41. Please be prompt and on time. We are running a little late, but I want to make sure we get all this stuff down while at the same time people are able to pay attention because they don't have to go to the bathroom. So I will be right back. Give it a 5 minutes. 4:41. We will be back here. To give everybody another minute, I do appreciate those of you that are still on the line. It does show that you are actually interested in wanting to learn what's going on and potentially get a federal job. So I appreciate you guys sticking with it. All right, in the sake of time, go ahead, Sarah.
Brock, I'm just now sending you the questions that we haven't answered yet.
Awesome. There was one question. Should I list KSAs in their own section? I state from who is this? Gina? Just as Geneva. I said I would not, at least in resume, you would use to apply for GS 13 or below, but I will defer to you for GS 14 or above. So what would you think for KSAs? Is it just keeping your experience block, or is that more of an SES, putting your KSAs into a different section? All right, on that, I will get back with Sarah later, but I want to respect everybody's time. So the supplemental questionnaire. Up front, most supplemental questionnaires are different. What we will go over here is an example taken from USA Jobs. These are a couple of examples of how you go about previewing the supplemental questionnaire. Anybody who has applied for a job will see the supplemental questionnaire pop up. It's usually after you select all the resume you're going to do, all the documents you're going to send. You send to your agency website. That's when the supplemental questionnaire pops up. If you did not know this, every announcement will give you the opportunity to preview the supplemental questionnaire before you actually apply to the position. It's important to understand that you must tailor your resume to not only the announcement, but also the supplemental questionnaire. This is something huge that I wasn't told going through the process, that I had to learn the hard way. Here are some, and here's another example of how to go about it, where it might be found. You see the link here. It says complete assessment questionnaire. For a quick preview of the assessment questionnaire, click here. This is an example, and here are some examples of what the questions you will be answering look like. Remember what I said about a test? Again, these are questions from specific announcements, but they are out there. And this example shows a format that requires you to select everything you have experience with. Guess where everything else you select has to be? That's right, your resume. There are several different ways the supplemental questionnaire will ask about your experience. Some will ask you to input examples. Other will ask for dates and job titles. You have to make sure you include everything the announcement and the supplemental questionnaire are looking for in your resume. Supplemental questionnaires are also called self-assessments. This is where you get to select how well you think you qualify for the job. By show of hands, who has heard that no matter what, you should always choose expert or the highest rating possible? We got 1, 4, 6, 7, 8, 6, back to 6, 7, 8, cool. All right, so, well, that's a big old myth. We spoke about this earlier, but this is a biggie, which is why I wanted to put it out again. If you inflate your qualifications and or experience, for instance, your resume doesn't support the answers you give in the supplemental questionnaire, you may be removed from consideration for the position. At a minimum, your self-assessment will be downgraded and your resume will be put at the back of the pile. So rate yourself accurately. From here, we're going to go over an example of what should be reflected in your resume based on your self-assessment. Again, this is only an example to give you an idea. This isn't the only way to do it, nor is this the only format the questions come in. Bottom line, no matter what the supplemental questionnaire is asking for, your resume must reflect the answer you select. So let's think about this question. Researching, analyzing, and developing reports, data tools, and providing training and leadership. Based on the question above, Let's see ways your resume should look based on your potential answers. For this format of the supplemental questionnaire question, you have 5 choices. I have not had an education or training. I have had education or training in how to perform this task, but have not performed this task on the job. I have performed this task on the job under close supervision by a supervisor or senior employee. I have performed this task as a regular part of my job, and this task has been a major part of my work. I am highly skilled at performing this task, and I have supervised to train others in performance of this task, and blah, 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 blah. Basically, you're an expert. So, example, supplemental questionnaire. I have not had education or training. Well, this one's pretty easy. If you don't have the experience, it won't be in your resume. From this example, I have education and training on how to perform this task, but have not yet performed it on the job. From this example, they've used it. So let's check out what a potential resume bullet would read. Attended administrative excellence training and was taught the basics of providing training to leadership. From this example, we see the person has training, but they don't say that they've used it, where, in what environment, etc. Now we're getting to more information from the resume bullet. Here we can see that this person has some experience, but not a ton. Don't be afraid to pick this one if it's accurate. Here, we have an even more detail and more context. Finally, the expert. Think about the question. Think about maybe how could this bullet read? So notice how the examples are getting longer and longer. That's what detail and context looks like. For this example, again, I left out some things that can make this bullet even stronger. Again, quantifiable and quantifiable metrics. How much was improved? When? How often? Etc. Again, I don't know how better to foot stomp this. Well, maybe this. If you're not sure about what to select, select the next lower choice. That way, if the HR reviewer sees that you are actually more qualified than the selection you made, your resume self-rating will be increased without being penalized. But again, if you select something and it turns out that it was too low, well, if you select something and it turns out that it was too low and you self-selected out of the running, then honestly, maybe the job just wasn't for you. Now that you've got an idea of what we're talking about, let's dive into how to make sure we're clearly detailing our experience and hitting all of the requirements. Wordsmithing your experiences. The experience and examples in your federal resume need to paint a clear picture about how, when, and where you gained the experience and met the qualifications the announcement is looking for. When writing your experiences, think implied versus specified. The best answer is you must specify everything, even the things you believe are in the implied category. What do I mean by implied versus specified? Well, let's look at the example of taking out the garbage. Implied with that would be remove the bag from the bin, walk it out the front door, open the front door, walk to the garbage can, open the garbage can, put the bag in the garbage can, close the lid, return to the house, closing the front door, replace the bag in the bin. When describing what you did, you should be clear and detailed as possible. And don't just include how, when, and where, but also the skills used. Maybe you used another skill set, such as verbal communication, that you used while being responsible for directing incoming calls or stepping in to represent your supervisor. Written communication examples should state that written skills include, for example, any communication sent. Don't just describe what you did as a duty or responsibility, but also if you used Microsoft Office suite software, such as Excel, PowerPoint, spreadsheets, etc. For our veterans and transitioning service members out there, writing in civilian language means avoiding militaryisms. Private companies and federal agencies don't have NCOICs, petty officers, sergeants major, platoons, ships, or brigades. So you need to translate those things into something HR reviewers and managers understand. I've stated it before and will again several more times. You want the agency to know your experience is experience. Where you got it doesn't matter. This is the same with acronyms. Use them sparingly, if at all, and always spell them out at least once. Finally, when it comes to numbers, either spell out or write out all of the O's. For instance, 30 million with the 6 zeros. It tends to have more of a wow effect than just putting 35M. When defining your role, state the facts. Did you work on your own, as part of a team, as a supervisor? Did you assist with other functions? Did you manage supervisors? Go beyond listing your job responsibilities by using accomplishments and examples to highlight the results of your work experience. Again, avoid using militarisms when describing your duties. Use civilian terms when describing your organization. Instead of brigade, try an organization of over 2,000 personnel. You can also use terms like agencies, directorates, office. For those of you that aren't in the Marines or Army, a brigade is an 06 level command. Avoid military-only organization titles like battalions and squadrons. When developing your experience bullets, you also want to avoid terms like helped, worked, assisted with, I have experience with. Instead, clearly explain what you did, what task you completed, and was it key to the successful completion of the mission? Did you improve anything, change anything, better anything? What specific skills, abilities, and/or attributes did you employ to complete the task? What equipment or software did you use? You need context and detail. Again, avoid responsible for and served as. Instead of responsible for, try managed, completed X number of tasks, or similar action verbs that embody initiative. Don't just say major duties include currently I am working on. State clearly what you did. Civilian term of battalion would be organization of over 500 people. Did I mention you need to avoid militarisms when describing what you did? Next, when developing your resume, it should reflect clearly the professional level you worked at. It should paint a clearer picture whether or not you were a doer or a policymaker. Your bullets and narratives need to show that you have entry, middle, senior, or executive level experience depending on the announcement. A good way to format your bullet narratives is to use, and to help add context, is to use either the PAR, STAR, or CCAR methods as a template. Note, I will not go into the CCAR method. That's more of a senior level executive way to write a resume. So doing this not only gives you a strong format for your experience, but it will give you practice for your interviews, where it is strongly recommended you format your interview responses using the PAR or STAR method. We'll start with the PAR method. Problem, situation, issue. That's the context. Action, what you did, the steps you took, and the result in numbers or metrics. This is an example bullet using the PAR method to develop it. We see here addressing mission essential function failures. That was the problem. Action by utilizing professional network, was able to mobilize the California National Guard, etc. The result was to meet their short and long-term needs in less than a week. The STAR method is also the recommended method of answering the behavioral interview questions you will face during your eventual interview. Think it positive here, folks. You're going to get interviewed. It's a good habit to start writing and speaking in those terms now. STAR, situation or background. Task. The task also includes the problem to solve, the goal to reach, or the task to complete and skills used. The action. Action is actually steps you took to complete or achieve the goal, and you can also explain the process. The result. How you contributed, benefit, improve the organization, improve the process. and or important lessons learned or skills gained through the outcome. Example of a long bullet using the STAR method. We'll save the CCAR method for another class, but you can search out examples of the CCAR method on the web if you would like to know more. Listing college education. I strongly recommend listing college education, military education, certifications, and other training separately. Pay attention to the announcement. Understand whether education will be a major factor or not in being qualified. Don't shortchange yourself because you don't have a full degree yet. Many jobs are looking for experience and transferable skills that are communicated in your resume. Although it is always good to address education on the resume, you need to be conscious of whether or not that will be a deciding factor or not, so you don't have to be as detailed if it isn't. For instance, if you're a psychologist and you're applying to a psychologist position, you need to have the certain schooling and degrees to get that job. Whereas many program analyst positions, you do not, or you do not need a specific degree for that position. Excuse me. Volunteer experience is a very important section that can add a lot to your resume. Volunteer experience is any unpaid experience you might have. It can include work done through national service programs such as the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, or work for community-based philanthropic and social organizations like churches, schools, etc. Volunteer experience helps build critical competencies, knowledge, and skills, and provides a valuable training location and experience that translate directly to your resume. Need to include the name of the organization and location, exact dates, number of hours per week you work, as well as a brief description of the duties, and identify your major roles, responsibilities, and accomplishments. All this looks pretty familiar, right? Exactly. That's because your volunteer experience is experience. I have also seen separate sections for affiliations as well. If you're affiliated with an organization out there, I encourage you to list it in this section and include everything you've done for them. And it all depends on how you want to write your volunteer experience. You can include your volunteer experience concurrently with your regular experience, work experience, or in its own section for volunteer experience. That is up to you. Next, award sections are good to include if you have the room, but make sure you include a statement about any award decorations in the applicable experience section. This will give the experience more context, detail, and push your resume beyond just meeting the minimum qualifications. That's it. That's a slide. You need to include a minimum of 3 professional references. I have heard many people ask why. It's because if you start the federal hiring process, is already long enough. If you include three professional references in your resume and the employer and hiring manager would like to move you on in the hiring process, they don't have to wait for you to get back to them. That is why it's always a good idea to include at least 3 professional references. Next, relevant military education and training. Agencies don't care about your military schools unless those schools taught you something that applies to what they're looking for. And almost to an agency, they won't know that it matters unless you tell them. There are many military schools out there that are directly translatable and transferable to the civilian sector. You just have to be able to articulate that they did teach you something that the agency does care about, and they should know, and why they should care about you taking that position, and why you having that school puts you at a higher level than someone who didn't take it. Next, again, relevant professional training. Did that training teach you something that applies to what they're looking for? Again, they probably won't know unless you tell them. The same thing with certifications. Unless it's relevant, they probably don't care. So here's the big one for our veterans and transitioning service members. The SFFEB's Military to Civilian Translation Guide is available on LinkedIn and Facebook. I will also include it in our most recent copy in our after event email. If you can't find it or like, again, to contribute, feel free to email contact sffeb@dol.gov, and we will email you a copy if you don't receive it in the email. Some examples. We've all heard it, and I've said it several times. Your resume must be written in language that an HR resume reviewer understands. The person reviewing your resume probably has no idea what the job is looking for, only what they're being told to review. And the likelihood of that HR reviewer understanding what you did in the military is probably in the 1% range. This is why resumes must clearly state how you meet the qualifications for the position in terms the HR reviewer and managers understand. Here are some examples. Military experience is experience, professional experience. The Army, the Navy, and the United States Marines are not federal departments, but the Department of Defense and the Department of the Army and the Department of the Navy are. Military occupational specialty, career field, specialty, job duties. Mission, mission's easy. That's a project, task, function, objective. For the NCOs out there, right? Instead of NCO E5, E6, you're a manager, you're a team lead, you're a leader. NCOIC, supervisor, senior team chief, senior technician. For our junior officers, project officer, general manager, administrator. For those that are recon, data collection, analysis, survey. Even more, right? Don't use subordinates, use employees, personnel, or workers. Combat was high stress operations, conflict, highly hazardous conditions. Again, brigade, organization of 2,000 or more people, group or division. Units, clients, unit, department, company. Right? For combat, you can also use support of national strategic objectives as a good little bullet point. As we get closer to the end of our presentation, I would like to add these closing tips and reminders. Context matters. Explain what you did, how you did it, and if it made a difference. If it's not in your resume, then you didn't do it. Only include relevant information, but again, if it's not in your resume, then you didn't do it. I recommend you create one master resume as a foundation and then use copies of that tailored to each announcement. The master resume allows you to put everything, all of your experience, no matter the MOS background, etc., into one place, and then you can adjust it from there. Next, state the facts. Do not exaggerate. Avoid jargon and militarisms. Use acronyms sparingly, if at all, and be sure to spell them out at least once. Go back as far as you need to in your resume in order to show that you have the experience and qualifications the announcement is looking for. Next, find a mentor. Pick their brain. There are some great private organizations out there, and the Interagency Veterans Advisory Council, IVAC, is working on one specifically for veterans and military spouses, both in the federal government as well as those who are interested in the federal government. I personally have used and mentor through Veterati. There are also Hire Our Heroes US and a bunch. Finally, your resume must be clear. No one will make a guess or assumptions about your knowledge, training, and experience. So you have to be the one to put it in there. Building your resume, some additional resources. Again, these will be sent out after the presentation. Some more links. Federal resume, different resume guides from different agencies. And with that, we are at the end. I would like to thank everybody for taking part. This is my contact information. Please feel free to email me with any questions we did not answer or suggestions to make future webinars more effective. With that, I will close this out and open it up for questions. I have one already in the booth. Go ahead, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie.
Hello.
Anne-Marie. Oh, there you are. Is that you? Okay, I've got a 731. Go ahead.
Okay, this is Kelly. I'm wondering if there are any reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities in applying for positions or completing resumes.
Resumes, I'm not sure. We, the SFFEB, I volunteer to help review resumes, stuff like that. There are organizations out there that do the same thing. During the application process, you do have the opportunity to request reasonable accommodations from the agency. But again, those processes are different per agency, so you would have to look through the announcement in order to find out who you need to email or who you need to contact in order for that to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anne Marie Norris, you still got your hand up. Nothing? All right, it is down. All right, any other questions? All right, Zama, I think did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, you did. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, I have seen several people right below on your resume, right below your name and your address and phone number, writing veteran preference and putting yes or noting yes. Do you recommend that?
That's a complicated question, but in short, yes, with a caveat. How they are doing it is absolutely not what you want to do. So veterans preference yes tells me nothing. So veterans preference, so what I'm going to share. Okay, can you see the document I just dumped onto the thing? Got some green letters to it.
Yes.
So this is the resume template I develop and I use myself. So with here, it'll be veterans preference, right? Special hiring authority eligible. And then I would list out what veterans preference I am eligible for. So with that said, I am CPS. So there's usually a 2 or 3 letter acronym that goes along with whatever veterans preference category you fall into. CPS indicates I am a 100% disabled veteran, or excuse me, 30% or more combat disabled veteran. So that tells them, so that shows, okay, what category I fit into and how many points I get. The special hiring authorities are something completely different. Special hiring authorities, again, include the 30% or more disabled veteran, VRA, Schedule A hiring authorities, as well as the VEOA, but the VEOA is a little bit more complicated than that. We can go into that if you have questions. So yes, I personally do include that information in my resume, but I list it out so it's very clear. Again, I don't want, in my own personal method of applying for federal positions, I try to think about all the questions that a hiring manager may have, and I try to answer those questions in my resume. All right, Nolanta, go ahead.
Hello, sir. So I'm having my very first federal interview this Monday. So I was wondering, like, apart from the STAR method that you described, is there any other like material that I can go through before that? Is there any link or something or a book that you can recommend for to get prepared for the federal interview?
There are many links on YouTube of those. Also within the USA Jobs YouTube channel, they actually go over the some kind of a more general thing, because again, all agencies are different, but it does go over the general interview kind of techniques, how to do it, how to prepare, things like that. So if you want to look on YouTube, the USA Jobs YouTube channel, those would be there. If you want to do a general search on federal interview techniques, those are there. I did post to the Veterans Federal Employment Collaborative earlier today. It may not work for you because I think it's in April, but I know that OPM is conducting a class on interviewing and conducting interviews and being interviewed as a applicant. So you may want to check that out. OPM is always putting on really great webinars along those lines.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Gina, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, perfect. So I am just still a little bit confused about the portion that you talked about when including all your qualifications and requirements for the position that's one step lower than the one that you're applying for. Um, I guess like, and sorry if I missed this, but like, is there a section, like, is there a separate section that we should include all those qualifications for on a resume, or should we integrate them like throughout? And part two, are they really going to be that, I guess if you miss like one little thing about that lower job, like, is that going to disqualify you for everything if you just miss like one detail or a few details? Like, is it?
I hate to scare you here. Yeah, I hate to scare you here, but yes, you must show that you are not only qualified for the position you're applying to, but also would have been qualified for lower level positions. Because that's the way the federal government builds. So you must have been a GS5 for a year to become a GS7. You must be a GS7 for a year to become a GS9. You must be a GS9 for a year to become a GS11. Those are some of the most basic requirements of most federal positions. The only caveat to those are ones that, the education requirements then turn around. But after GS9, education requirements become less important versus experience at the next lower level. So unfortunately, it's not something you're going to be able to get away from or kind of miss. I know from my own personal experience, many dozens of resumes and applications submitted, all returned, not referred, or did not meet minimum qualifications. And looking into it and doing some research and talking to some federal HR folks, that lack of qualifications wasn't based on the position I was applying for. It was based on my lack of qualifications at the next lower grade.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. Did that answer your question?
Just like to add on that, would you or should you look at like multiple positions that are at that lower GS level? Or I guess, yeah, how do you specifically find the one that is relevant for the position that is lower?
Research. Within the federal, within OPM's website, they have a library on all kinds of stuff. So that's where you could go. Another would be if you're applying to, say, a GS11 position, somewhere in that same agency probably has an announcement for the next lower position. So if you look for that, and then you can kind of tailor your resume or tailor your lower positions to that. Within the OPM guides, there are also various competencies and discussions about at this competency level you should have, or at this professional level you should have these competencies. And then if you find the right documents, it'll actually give you examples of what they mean by that competency at that level. So it does require some legwork on your part.
Thanks so much. That's really helpful.
No problem. Zema, go ahead.
Yes, thank you again. I have another question. I'm completely new to the whole process. And do you know the average time that you're expected to hear after you go through an interview from HR, or what is the average time and what are the steps? I noticed that it's completely different to the civilian sector.
It is. So the time frame, there's the book answer and the realistic answer. We'll discuss the book answer. Book answer is 45 days. 45 days for the close of the announcement till the person should be told that they're hired. Again, that should be. That's perfect world. That's non-COVID. That's, no storms. That's people going into work. You know what I mean? In experience, it's usually far from that. It could be anywhere from 90 days to even be notified that you were sent to the hiring manager. And part of the process too is legally, an agency has to tell everybody that wasn't picked that they weren't picked before they can tell the person who was. So that also does take time. It is a long process. I'm not going to deny that. It does, honestly kind of suck, especially for transitioning service members, people that may be out of work, who need work, maybe that applied for their dream job and is just waiting for it. It does suck, to be completely brutally honest, but it's also worth it. Sarah just put, be sure to check back in the USA Jobs account to see your status. The system is supposed to email you, but it does sometimes, or sometimes it doesn't. Again, I can't say more than that really. I do know people that applied. I have been speaking to people that applied in November, and they're just now receiving referrals. Notification that they were referred. So that's why I strongly recommend people and applicants continue to apply. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't assume because you're referred that you're probably going to get hired. But also it's up to you. What's your personal priority? What's your personal risk threshold? All right. Do you need a job or can you wait? That's up to you, and no one can answer that question but you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Sarah sent me a list of questions, so I'm going to try to go through some of these and answer some of the ones so everybody here gets their questions answered. From Xavier, can you tailor your resume to be OPM guidelines for the job posting? Sarah did. You should tailor the application for each job you apply for, and yes, I did go into that. If I did not, or if there were any questions about needing to tailor for every job, the short answer is yes, you must tailor for every job. Yes, it doesn't mean you will get it. Yes, absolutely, Sarah. So referred means you met the requirements and your info has been forwarded to the hiring manager. That doesn't mean you get an interview. So this is an important statement, especially for the veterans out there who are utilizing the Veterans Equal Opportunity Act, VEOA, Employment Opportunity Act, VEOA Special Hiring Authority. There's a misconception about the VEOA. It is not an actual special hiring authority as the others are, as like the 30% or more disabled veteran. What the VEOA does is allows you as a veteran, yes and no, I'll get that in a second, Mike. So what the VEOA does, it doesn't give you any preference. It doesn't do anything for you other than allows you to compete as a federal employee. So sometimes you'll see two job announcements for the same job. One will be public and one will have all the list of special hiring authorities. Utilizing the VEOA, you can apply as a competitive service federal employee to that job. That's the only thing a VEOA will do for you. So the problem with the VEOA is it will most likely automatically get you referred to almost every job you apply to, so long as you meet the minimum qualifications. The problem with that is you don't know, and there's never any feedback given, which I agree is the wrong answer, but it's the real answer. There will never be any feedback given to your resume. You will continue to be referred. You think your resume is awesome because you're being referred, but when in fact, you're only being referred because you're utilizing the VEOA. So my strong recommendation is if you've been referred a bunch, but have never been called back for an interview or selected to say you're one of the top resumes, be a little introspective, look into your resume, see what you might be doing wrong, see what you might be lacking, and fix it from there. Personal blogs showing work performed within a personal lab. James wrote this. Yes, absolutely. You want to make sure to include all of the work, all the experience you did, any professional speaking, any professional writing, any professional, especially like lab work or things that would be directly relevant to the job you're applying for. You absolutely want to include it in your resume, whether that's including it in a separate section, creating a section for those sorts of things, utilizing one of the sections that's already there. I can't tell you that. It's whatever best way you can utilize and what you can use for your resume. Gina asked, what are some good examples of good certifications? So we've all heard, I'm sure, the big push now is the PMP. It's a project management professional certification. Certification relevant to the job. Those are the good examples of certifications. Is that certification relevant to the job? I will say this. The military at one point had, I think it was through Skillsoft, I'd have to relook at some of my notes, had a free Skillsoft training portal where if you're in the military, you could get free Skillsoft training. These trainings included professional and human resources, certification test prep, Microsoft Office professional test prep, Microsoft Office certification test prep. Even just taking these trainings and including those trainings in your resume. For instance, I did 11 hours of advanced Microsoft Excel training. Put that into a resume. What that shows is you have a 100% demonstrable experience in something that the agency might be looking for. So, Gina, I hope that answered your question. Volunteer work is unpaid work or internship or what? I don't know who sent this. Was a guest, but I would say either, however you would want to do it. You can use it concurrently in your experience. You can set a separate section, whatever the best way for you to convey your knowledge, training, and experience. Kim, again, yes, you should actually include your salary. Why? Because that is another metric that the federal HR representative and reviewer can use to qualify you as a certain level. Again, certain grades at certain steps are paid a certain amount. That a certain amount qualifies outside to an additional certain amount. If you're paid 50 grand on the outside, that equates to a GS, say 5 on the federal side. That helps make it easier to understand and see that, yes, okay, this is the level you are working at. So Atif, even if you add your undergrad and grad school transcripts, is including a section highlighting relevant coursework helpful? If it's relevant, yes. And you said your word right there. Relevant coursework, absolutely. Anything relevant should be included in your resume. Kim had should we use acronyms? I think I answered that several times. Follow-up question, I am looking to find more about military civilian jobs. I hope I can conduct an informational interviews with someone who can get me into the civilian work. Thank you. So with that, Anna. I'll answer that in a question, Xavier. So I'm looking to find more military jobs. So with that, Anna, I would recommend using LinkedIn as a networking tool. Reach out to people that work for those agencies and see if they do informational interviews. See if you can pick someone's brain. See if they're willing to mentor you. All you can do is ask. The worst thing they can say is no. Schedule A, active duty military here. I looked at my medical records, to the Board of Rehabilitation and they gave me a Schedule A letter without any issues. No, that's awesome, Sean. Yes, Schedule A is awesome, especially for those who are in active duty. We've utilized Schedule A. Schedule A is awesome because unlike the VRA, you can be non-competitively selected for any position up to GS 15, as long as you meet the minimum qualifications. Xavier, to answer your question, is it base pay or military statement of compensation, i.e. BAH, BAS? I recommend you put all compensation. So your total military salary before taxes is what I recommend you put on your as the salary. What do you think it would mean, if anything, to receive a nondescript envelope with a recruitment letter from the CIA? I was 40 years old, just graduated from liberal arts college, and verified it was really a CIA, late bloomer, now working to get certified as a legal analyst. Honestly, Kaz, rock on. I have no idea. I thought CIA's got my name from. If that's the case, if they're cold calling you, rock on. Because the agencies do cold call. Eventually, there are resume repositories out there. That's why it's important, if you are utilizing the USA Jobs resume builder or the resume repository in USA Jobs, make sure you have your resume selected as searchable, because it doesn't happen often, but they do go through resumes. I know FEMA is a big one for a resume repository. If you apply to a FEMA job, usually they'll hold onto your resume if you are qualified. And then when other agencies or agency officials need a position, they will go to those recruiters first. I can talk about the 120-day mark. So for those that didn't know, if you are active duty military, most agencies, and will actually have listed in the announcement, but it's also a good rule of thumb, they don't want you applying outside of the 120-day window from your retirement date or separation date. Veterans preference prior to retiring, you utilize a statement of service in lieu of your DD-214 when applying for jobs within that 120-day window. You can Google statement of service example, and if you have any questions, I will also include the statement of service example in my post-event email. Is it related to retirement date or is it application terminal leave? It is, Russ, it is based on your retirement date. So that 120 days is based on your retirement date. However, another myth to dispel that wasn't on the list is you can start working for a federal agency while on terminal leave. So that is an important thing to understand. So when you're talking your 120 days to be able to apply and your availability date, those may not be the same thing. So it's up to you to determine how much leave you want to take, things like that. But just remember that and think about that when applying. The ideal would be getting a job before you actually get out. That way you have overlapping paychecks. Do formal federal employees really have some advantages? They do and they don't, Albania. I'll have to defer to Sarah on this as she's been in the federal system longer than me, but I will say this. Your previous federal experience can and does count towards your towards applying. For instance, if you're a GS9 for 2 or 3 years, got out for 10 years, and you want to apply for a GS11 position, by the sake that you were a GS9 for more than 52 weeks, that does check the block on at least one specialized experience you would need for the next higher grade. Russ, start July, which is 100 days from now. So again, Russ, I hope I explained the 120-day thing. Can I get personal documentation from OPM? So, Andrea, I know you would have to reach out to OPM to see if you have that. The DD-214, you'll have to reach out to whatever service component you had to try and get one built for you or one resurrected. It's out there somewhere. You'll just be able to find it, and it may take you, and it may take some digging on your part. Good.
There, Andrea, and I'm going to try to find you the link, but it's all the civilian personnel files are in a big vault in St. Louis. And years ago, I asked for my SFFEB, and I thought this is going to go nowhere. And within a week, it showed up. Amazing. I can't answer the military side of it.
Yeah, in the military side, the service components, Fort Knox for the Army, and then the various other places for the other services. So, and then if you look on the service component website, DD-214 lookup, things like that, that'll point you in the right direction. There you go. We got National Archive. Wow, great, thank you. So hopefully that helps. Well, it's getting late. Thank you very much. We're about a half over our time, but I appreciate all of you who stuck with it. Hopefully we all thank you, Satrend. Appreciate that. So I hopefully everybody's still on the call and those that took part learned something important. Again, we're here to help. It's important to me to give back. It's important to me to make sure we get more veterans into the federal sector. Not only that, diversity is a huge push right now. Nowhere in the United States you will find a group of people more diverse than those serving in the military. Serving in the military have a higher percentages per capita of minorities, women, LGBTQ, everything in the military, everybody in the background, everybody is different. It's awesome. I love it. So that's why I do what I do. I do what I do to help you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email, LinkedIn. Was probably a good spot. Veterans Federal Employment Collaborative for those of you who are vets or military spouses. Don't hesitate to reach out. Keep an eye on your inbox. I will be utilizing the email that you used to register with in order to send the post-event wrap-up and information. Expect that sometime tomorrow. And feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. Before we cut out, anybody else, one last chance for questions. I'm going to say going once. Actually, I should have Jim Dickens from Letterkenny. Questions. Anybody have questions? Going once, going twice. And sold. No more questions. So everybody, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Thank you for participating. And I will remain on the call in case anybody has anything they just don't want to bring up in the group. I will cancel the recording time now.